Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for the FLO podcast. I'm here with Chris Chrysostom and Joseph Fiscella, two of the developers for FLO blockchain. And today we're going to kind of have a roundtable discussion where we discuss the FLO technology a little more in depth, the incentive models for developers and for users, and just the possibilities of the technology in general. So thank you guys for joining us here today, and let's go ahead and open this up.
Awesome. Yeah.
So we can start off with a quick introduction from each of you, just maybe your name and what you're doing and how you have been involved with FLO in the past. And Chris, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, let's see. I was kind of thinking about how long I've been in sort of IT. Believe it or not, I've been paid to do software development and that type of thing for 31 years now. I was thinking back, one of my first projects was to do some development for the same software development group that built out the software for the first Mars rover. That was a very interesting project to be part of. Turned out my code didn't go into the Mars rover. It actually went into something that was called like an automated wheelchair, a self-guided wheelchair that used a very similar technology to use artificial intelligence in a very light way to navigate someone who was bound to a wheelchair. So that's where things started for me. And I don't know if many know, I came to Alexandria, I think it was 2016 or somewhere in there, and did some development work for them. And at the same time, I was focused on building applications that use Bitcoin and use that as a payment mechanism. That's where I got my first taste of actual development. In all of that, I came to FLO blockchain development. So somewhere in that neighborhood, 2016 or so, is when I actually was contributing, or at least helping out with testing and things of that start. And then I've certainly stayed in the business for ever since. And the most recent type of work I've been doing is with property rights. With Medici land governance and working to represent property rights on blockchain through them, and that just brings me to where we are today, I guess.
All right. Well, thank you, and Joey, just a quick introduction, and we'll jump into the discussion.
Thanks, Jenny. I did my intro last time too, but basically, hey guys, I'm Joey. I've been involved in FLO since the very beginning. I think I found the thread on Bitcoin Talk within a few hours of it being posted while I was looking for altcoins to mine with my mining rig. And I got involved with development. I started contributing to the GitHub pretty much right away within a few days. And I've been growing the ecosystem since then and helping out where I can to make sure that the product stays alive and stays relevant and makes a difference in the space. And we're going to talk about a little bit of the new plans that we have for FLO, I think, in a couple of minutes here. But yeah, just been involved since 2013, June, which is when FLO began. And still involved, still going at it, and still helping development processes move forward with FLO.
All right, thanks for that, Joey. So in general, let's just start off with talking about incentives. How do you all see FLO being developed to further incentivize development and mining and people running nodes, and just to build out the network in all the different pieces? What do you all think we can do, or how better to incentivize individuals to get involved with FLO?
So the mining algorithm, the subsidy that's distributed through mining, and the fee structure are the two things that most people look at when they think of incentives. I also think that there's potential for a foundation to be created. And we tried to do a foundation, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, and we just didn't have the right structure, I think. So it's possible within those 3 economic attack vectors that we can facilitate development and ongoing support for Flow, and make the economics of Flow work out such that all participants are incentivized rationally to contribute to the network. And the first way is through mining subsidy. So there are still several million Flow that need to be mined. It's not reaching its cap anytime soon. So the mining subsidy will continue until we reach 160 million Flow cap. And if there's price depreciation or if there's speculation on the Flow tokens becoming valuable, miners and node operators will begin using Flow and supporting the Flow network and getting paid for that. So that's the first way to make sure that Flow has economic activity and kind of give it some new lifeblood. The second way is through fees. So if we complete like a working example of OIP or a working prototype of OIP at a scale where the fees are high enough, the mining fees are high enough, it will rationally incentivize miners and node operators to contribute to Flow and to make sure that the network is sufficiently decentralized. So those are two ways. That's like the most straightforward way to make it work. The first way is to just make use of the remaining few million Flow that we have left. The second way is to build out OIP and the fee structure, which OIP is situated for, to make sure that we have a incentive ongoing, even when the subsidy runs out, for fees to continue on the network. And the third way is to make a foundation with some of the large amounts of Flow that some holders have, and just give them a opportunity to organize in such a way that they can use those Flow to facilitate development and facilitate different projects. And we've had success with that in the past. So we still have a little bit of Bitcoin, Raven Coin, and Flow that was donated to the foundation, and those have appreciated since then. I think we've spent a little bit on some Twitter dev, and we've spent a little bit on some mobile wallet dev and some other things, but we have a lot of it remaining still. So I think it's a good idea to view those three economic, like Flow generation and Flow trade schemes, in a way that we can continue to build out the ecosystem. And I'm definitely interested in the third one, especially because it seems like foundations and just organizations of people are a good way to kind of segue into this sort of DAO structure or governance structure that a lot of tokens are now making use of, and we weren't really popular until like last year.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I'm actually really keen on seeing some form of organization like this foundation idea that in of itself could segue into even on-chain governance, where there's a way for the community to actually make proposals for things that get developed, and then in turn vote for how to spend whatever funds are set aside for a development treasury. I'd say one thing I think might be a bit missing right now for in Flow, and just as it stands right now, that within the protocol there isn't something that sort of sets funds aside for development. So I would love if some brain cycles could go toward trying to figure out how to maybe adjust the protocol so that a treasury could be essentially contributed to by way with whatever is left with mining, or maybe through an off-chain mechanism for creating said treasury. But anyway, yeah, I really like that idea a lot.
So when you talk about having some kind of development treasury build out, would you all ever consider maybe adding a fee to like a transaction, a small fee that would accrue over time and go towards treasury stock? Is that something that you all have thought about or considered?
I would like, that probably would be the mechanism to put into the protocol, or is to figure out a way to add a fee to the transactions. Because right now, as we're kind of getting close to I guess we do have quite a number of years left for it to be completely out, but we're at the last part of the mining subsidy to be provided. So I think the other mechanism using fees is actually the way of trying to find ways of generating revenue for the protocol. So yeah, I would actually be open to that idea.
So for me, one of the issues with that is that when you look on the chain right now, there's just not an overwhelming demand to get space within the chain. So there have been times when we've talked in the past, just various members of the community, and we've discussed this issue that we have come up with basically the conclusion that demand for space on the chain, for transaction space, actual usage demand is what's going to really push the fees higher, I suppose, is when that space gets scarce. And so for right now, it's to me, it's just as being a long-term observer of Flow, it's like we could peel off a small part of that miner subsidy, I suppose, to go towards a development treasury. And I think that would be great money spent. I mean, to think about how much, let me rephrase that, to think how little of the amount of money that is being spent on Flow right now, and for it to be doing all the great things that it's currently doing, is pretty mind-boggling to me. That it would make sense to me that if we started putting some kind of steady money with some organization, like a foundation behind that, that we could really make this thing take off and push the development forward. And so I guess the issue to me is where do you find the person that's going to pay that fee? It's either going to come from increased usage on the chain, or it's going to come from removing part of that miner subsidy. And so I'll just leave that.
Yeah, to that I will probably love to remind everyone that one thing that was done, at least with the Teton County pilot and also with the Carbon County pilot that Medici Land Governance did, is they came out the way that as they were publishing documents, they just voluntarily increased the amount of fee that they were adding to the transaction. That's, I know, not the because it's voluntary, you're really relying on the goodwill of those who are publishing to contribute extra to that. But one thing that we noticed with that is
Chris, I actually got a piece of that. When you all posted that you were running that upload, I know a couple of us jumped online and grabbed that opportunity. So thank you for doing that. But so that is a viable model. I mean, you will get people on the margins that will come in and point their miners to Flow when that economics model changes.
Yeah, so that I'd say that I would suggest to address what you're talking about. That might be one area, but it didn't quite address what you're talking about finding a way to increase utility of Flow is really important, and that's where we might be getting to a little chicken and egg situation where we kind of need an individual or a group of individuals who actually put together some proposals of actual applications that could be built that will sort of stimulate that usage that you're talking about. Now, coming from the property rights side of things, of course, for me, everything has been, how do you, is there a way to encourage, property registrars, whatever, to do things like have an incentive on their own accord to put their records into a blockchain system, and in that process, pay the elevated fees in order to, help encourage the security of their own data. And so I think that if we can kind of keep finding more applications along those lines, that's where you can get the increase in utility. But the chicken and egg part, though, is on that model I just described, does require some developer to speculate that what they're building is going to increase that utility that you talked about, so that others will start the others will actually use their product enough to actually generate the fees that they can get start peeling away for themselves. So it's I think that's probably where kind of tying back into Joseph's idea of the foundation. That could be like a focus of the foundation too, is to help coordinate the development of said useful applications of the flow chain, and in encouraging that, just sort of get that utility you're talking about. So, that's a couple ideas.
Sure. Thank you for that. Now, Joey, in the Chris had kind of mentioned the idea that we could have a community governance, some kind of on-chain governance mechanism built in. Ultimately, that could be like a later step. But I know that we had talked at one point in time that Polkadot integration, or perhaps even like a REN-based integration, that once that we add those additional features to Flow, or they become possible, that there's room for an on-chain governance within, I know especially within Polkadot, that was one of the reasons we were taking a look at it. Do you see that being anything that we integrate into the future of Flow?
Yeah, I think even before Polkadot, we could probably make something cross-chain working on an EVM based thing, like Ethereum or Binance Smart Chain, or maybe even Avalanche's chain. Something that could be more quickly implemented. What I really want to do specifically is make a cross-chain centralized custodial bridge for Flow into wrapped Flow, and then start building out contracts and start building out some OIP features on additional chains that can serve kind of like the Web3 space before we even look at Polkadot or wait for RenBTC to complete their thing. So we have like an intermediary step where we can take action and make something happen quickly, and then we can actually find out how many holders of Flow are still interested in the community, and like if they, assuming all of them would trade all of their capital onto the new chain, it would be interesting to see how much liquidity we can get onto some of these dexes, and much of those Flow would actually be used for fees to read and write from it.
So in theory, if
metadata index, that'd be like kind of the first step within. Okay,
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. So in theory, if I were to take my Flow that's its own coin, and I were to take that Flow and then wrap it through a custodian onto the ETH network, and now I have wrapped Flow, and they're interchangeable one for one with each other. How does that work? Would the custodian basically takes my Flow and puts it into a deep freeze vault, and so that way the marketplace is assured that there's not we're not hypothecating new Flow into the market? How would that work? Joe, are you there?
Hey, yeah, my Wi-Fi is going in and out. Yeah, that's right. So the custodian would basically keep a record, a database of all Flow that's been transferred from the main Flow chain onto the side chain or the secondary chain, which in this case, our example would be ETH. And then, yes, it would be the custodian's job to make sure that there's no doubling up of Flow on both chains, so that only one of the two pieces of liquidity are active at the same time.
And that could be audited by the community with basically, if we just knew if like the wallet addresses were public or whatnot, people could look and see. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it could really be anybody that's trusted in the community. It's potentially something that can be set up very quickly. So I'd like to see it happen sooner than later. We'll see if we can get some smart contracts written and some use cases. I didn't want to do this before we had any use case out or any software written to use OIP on a secondary chain. But it might be better to just do it now, see if there's any interest, and then gauge interest based on the volume of trades, and then just look to see are preparing themselves for this. But there's no reason not to do the custodial swap sooner. And then, if nothing ends up happening or we decide to take a different direction and go straight flow chain, everyone can just transfer their tokens back, and it wouldn't really be much of a loss. So yeah, that's how I can see this going. I think that, for ETH, it would be a little bit more expensive. We couldn't really cover the cost of that, so we'd have to make it a little bit of a more complicated process for each of the transferors would send the custodian some ETH and some flow to pay for the fee on Ethereum right now, which is quite high. But for a chain that has low fees like Binance Smart Chain, it's possible that we could do this on behalf of the users without having to have them send us money to cover the fees. So yeah, that's how I'm looking at this, and all three of those chains are compatible with the EVM. So it's very possible to make sure that we have something like that going pretty soon. It's just a matter of structurally, how do we want to do this? Who's going to be responsible for executing those trades? Who's going to be the one that's going to be doing these trades? What are the rules for the trades too? People can spam us. There might have to be a minimum of 20,000 flow that you put in so that we don't get spammed with too many small value transactions. And potentially we have a registration where you can only transfer once every 7 days to reduce the amount of work and time that we have to spend on this, because I think Flow has around 15,000 users or 12,500 users, something within that range. So it could be a lot of work. I'm not really interested in getting 12,000 emails tomorrow, so it could be it's going to be hard to make this an automated system very quickly, but it could be a manual custodial setup very fast. Then the bottleneck is who is trusted and who's going to be executing these transactions, and how is it going to work operationally. So we can figure that out. I'm very positive that we can figure it out quickly, and I just think it requires us to have a little bit more set up, ready to go, before we have everything in place for that.
All right, thank you. Chris?
Yeah, what I love about that idea, I just thought there is that what I love about that idea is that the other chain talking about then having the ability to apply, layer on some smart contract functionality to the coin, so we can almost have Flow with smart contract capabilities. And I think that will, even before OIP is implemented elsewhere, that could actually open the door to all kinds of uses for Flow. Another thing too, I'll throw in there, one area that I've been thinking about a lot is Cardano is actually working with Litecoin to create a cross-chain communication to go from Litecoin to Cardano, and they're using a mechanism where there's a proof of burn that gets exchanged back and forth, which is how they deal with preventing the double spend on Litecoin on the Litecoin network versus the Cardano wrapped Litecoin on the Cardano chain, and what Flow might be able to learn from them is when that pull request comes in for implementing that mechanism, because the source code for Flow is so closely related to Litecoin. I have a feeling that might be a way for the Flow community to leverage that capability right there, and that will open the door to another blockchain that Flow can kind of reside on and work and be part of. And again, Cardano is also another one that it's in the midst of releasing their smart contract platform also. So another example where OIP, for example, if we want to implement it that way, could get it implemented on kind of on another chain, but using the token that's still Flow. So that could be an interesting thing to do.
All right. What other areas do you think that Flow could move into beyond just getting the wrapped token? Chris, you had spent all this time working on the property rights portion of your business and building out these registers and getting getting land put into a titled property situation that maybe wasn't titled in the past. And I know you all had spent a lot of time trying to build out these institutions within countries that maybe didn't have access to capital and in banking and these modern Western institutions. And so, do you think that there's a way to use flow within the world of property rights and mix that into to DeFi or anything? How do you see that going forward?
Yeah, I absolutely do. So one thing that I have always liked about Flow, and even as a proof of work chain, is it gets a little bit technical and also speculative. But I have hypothesized that proof of work can be used as a proxy for the idea of reliability with records. So archival records have three characteristics that anyone who's looking at a record that they trust they look at, and in the first of which is they need to have a sense of authenticity. They just kind of need to know who wrote a record. The second thing is they want to have a sense, or at least law there is really representative of reality. And then the third thing, they count on reliability, meaning you know that when that author wrote that record, that it maybe even if it was 100 years ago, that it still is intact and says what it says. So that's the reliability. And that third leg is where I felt like proof of work can be part of demonstrating the reliability of a record. So now stepping back from all of that is just a given. I love the fact that Flow can provide that. There's great potential for it to become this platform for decentralized records, meaning records that, I'm not saying that a record can be just written by anyone and it just just because you say a property is yours, it's yours. It's more of that because you know who wrote the record, when the record was written, and you have some proxy for this reliability issue. You have the means now to start creating proof of the property right that the record represents. That proof, in turn, could be used by an oracle. Let's say, say a Flow Foundation really wants to get into it. They have a way of stamping that record with a certification to say, we feel that this proof is good enough to show that Alice owns the property, over here to the west of me, or whatever it is, and that cryptographic proof in turn could be used as a way of can be used as an oracle to demonstrate ownership, or at least some measurable sense of proof that what the record says is really correct. And then in turn, when that plugs into DeFi, then you start opening the door of being able to use a token to represent that ownership, which makes that ownership tradable and usable. You can start creating markets for it, and that's how we can start associating capital, for said token. And of course, I know everyone likes to talk about collateralization and that too. If there's proof of ownership, then if you are creating a lending platform that you need to have sort of proof of the ownership. Also, there's issues of valuation that have to get kind of put in there too. But let's say you overcome all those issues also, and then you start having this platform for really plugging into DeFi. And kind of getting back to the Comroute fees earlier, just imagine if in those processes that fees can be collected and passed back to the registrar's record or to participants within that ecosystem that created it. So yeah, I think there's definitely potential for using Flow as sort of the underpinning of of said platform that actually can make decentralized records a reality. And then there's a bunch of other things too, I think, that would be really useful in addition to that. But I don't need to go into it right now because I don't want to. You can take up a lot of time going through all of it. But yeah, in broad strokes, Flow definitely has the potential for being that solid underpinning for that records archive.
That sounds great. I know that the idea of having a global index for all data that property rights and property could definitely be added into that, and building up that archival trust. That sounds really great. Joey, is there anything else that we should be looking out for here in the coming year, or maybe you could kind of give us a peek into what you see coming forward, and what's in store for the rest of the year, I guess.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I would like to focus on is maybe a rebrand of Flow and making it more focused on OIP or something related to indexing. And the second thing is that I would like to get these new chain Flow tokens, or whatever they're going to be called. Maybe we can do a rebrand in that you migrate Flow to the new chain, and then the new chain, they're called something else. But in any case, I would like to use them for, number one, reading and writing to the metadata index, which gives them tangible value and gives investors some idea, and speculators some idea of how much the Flow is worth or how much the tokens are worth. And then the second thing is to use them in a governance structure to make decisions. In a truly decentralized network, there have to be some decisions made. And I think that in these more complex applications, unlike Bitcoin, where it's just a simple, shiny gold rock on the internet, which is extremely valuable, incredibly useful. But in fact, that is one of the situations where you want as few decisions as possible made, in my opinion. In these more complex applications that use blockchain to do something in a decentralized way, we need to have some decision making. So it's important to me that Flow, or the tokens that are in the other chain, or whatever we're going to be storing our value in, is used to facilitate voting in some way and decision making through a decentralized system, pseudonymous system, and just something that it doesn't have any central control or doesn't have any influence over it. I think that's the most important use case of the blockchain, and I think it is where most of the value comes from. So that's where I would say we should focus most closely, and that should be the first use case of the tokens on these additional chains. I think right now the space is growing. People are getting into Web3. I think Web3 is going to be huge, and I think that all the different NFTs and DeFi stuff and the tweets about Bitcoin and Dogecoin, all these new markets that are emerging and all the new people that are getting into it and learning how it's useful, they can't use Flow because it's just, the last time the wallet was updated was in 2018, and there aren't really any user-friendly interfaces to it. Bitcoin QT came out in 2009. So, just think about how long we've been using that C++ client and how the internet and computing has evolved since then, especially with the proliferation of mobile. And we're just not there yet. So, Web3 isn't even there yet. The MetaMask wallet and stuff that works on your mobile phone isn't really comparative to the stuff that you have on your PC, and most users are mobile users these days. So we've got an opportunity now to kind of do the developing countries skip straight to a smartphone thing, where they don't have landlines and they don't have the old dial phones. They skip straight into the feature phone and the smartphone era. QT to a Web3 wallet, and kind of forget about doing that whole medium phase where you went through struggling to get a web wallet out and struggling to work on a layer 1, because now the layer 2 and the Web3 wallet space has evolved to such a point where it's becoming user friendly. So we're in a unique position to kind of skip over a generation of work that's been done before us and get Flow into the new generation of Web3 coins and Web3 blockchain protocols. I think that's what our focus should be on.
Cool. All right. Well, it sounds good. I think we're kind of starting to bump up here on our time limit for today. So let's just close with, first of all, thank you all for joining me. And I know a lot of people are looking forward to listening to this discussion. But if someone wanted to reach out to you, if maybe there's a developer out there that wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you? And Chris, you can go ahead and start.
Let's see. Actually, probably on Telegram. So, my username is Chrysostom on Telegram is probably the fastest way. But email is not bad either, and I'm simply chris.chrysostom@gmail.com, and I'll probably be those are probably the two best ways to get a hold of me.
All right, thanks, Chris. And you, Joey?
Yeah, I'd say just hop in the Flow Telegram. It's flo.cash/blockchain, and hit up an admin there. I'm there joining the group, and just you can send me a DM on Telegram, or you can just chat in public on the Telegram group, and someone else will reply. It's a pretty welcoming group, and it's got a lot of members that have been in the space for a long time since Flow was created in 2013. So great groups to just ask any questions or get in contact with some Flow members, and community community outreach should be through that channel.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Again, if you all want to get to the Telegram chat, it's t.me/FLO blockchain, all one word. We'll have a link in the description below. Thanks for joining us.